everybody, I am Sarah. Welcome back to Overkill Global. This is BangerTV's international heavy metal review show. For my next Overkill Global video, I'm heading to a country that shares a border with France, Switzerland, Austria, and Slovenia. This country was the homeland of the Roman Empire, which dominated both Europe and the Mediterranean for centuries. It became a kingdom in 753 BC and a republic in 509 BC. This country, of course, is Italy. Known to North Americans as pretty much the best place in the world for pizza and pasta, as well being a cultural and tourist mecca. Italy's great. And it's easy to see why. The Fountain of Trevi, the Santa Maria del Grazie, St. Peter's Basilica, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the ruins of Pompeii, the Colosseum, weed marches. Oh, it's simply stunning. I have spent a lot of time in Italy and I love it. To learn more about the Italian occult doom metal scene, and yes, I am being hyper-specific because I'm a hyper-specific kind of bitch, which, to be clear, is different than the epic metal scene and different from the epic doom metal scene, which is why we will not be talking about the absolutely magnificent epic metal band Doom Sword. Let's talk to Edoardo Vitolo. He is a metal journalist and the author of a book on Italian doom metal.
Hello everyone, I'm Edoardo Vitolo from Italy. I'm a music journalist and writer. Some books of mine speaks about the Italian extreme scene, the history of doom metal, and also the official biography of Antonio Bartocchetti from Iacula and Antonius Rex. Italian doom scene can be inserted in a greater category called Italian dark sound. The Italian dark sound starts with early progressive but also horrific dark and ritual album from Iacula and Antonius Rex, and keep it going in the 80s with early Death SS, with Paul Chain on guitar, the escape of Paul Chain from Death SS and his solitary career, and also some obscure and doom bands like Requiem, then the Black, Epitaph, Zess, Sacrilege, Black Hole, and also some demos from bands like Tony Tears, Monumentum, and some other bands. The Italian doom scene is also inspired from some movies and soundtracks like Mario Bava movies, Claudio Simonetti and Goblins soundtracks, and his famous collaboration with Dario Argento, Lucio Fulci movies, and some movies from 70s in white and black like Berfagor and Il Segno del Comando. From the Italian doom scene and also from the Italian dark sound, I have chosen one album, the first EP from Paul Chain called The Teaching from Satan. Why this album? Because this album is full of doomy tunes, punchy drum fills, solid bass lines, heavy titanic riff, and also the atmospheric and sinister vocals from Paul Chain. I can say that Paul Chain is a doom genre of his own. The Teaching from Satan is a doom classic for sure.
So it is absolutely perfect that Edoardo chose Paul Chain, whose records are here, because Paul Chain is a hugely formative figure in the Italian occult doom metal scene. The fact of the matter is that this hyper-specific style of Italian doom that we're focusing on sprang from a very specific set of musical conditions within Italy. First up, the country has a long and extremely rich history of progressive rock bands that sang in their native tongue. It also has a long history of instrumental music pieces. In particular, bands that worked on soundtracks for everything from the spaghetti western soundtrack work of Ennio Morricone to the horror movie soundtrack work of artists like Goblin and Gianni Ferrero. And side note, I've included a great little primer in the video description for you to learn more about that whole scene. So, from these dual conditions of progressive music and occult horror soundtrack music came a wellspring of very strange and esoteric and progressive musicians such as Paul Chain. Paul Chain was also involved with the first band that we are going to discuss today, which is the mighty Death SS. They are named as such after their singer Steve Silvester, combined with Paul Chain's pseudonym, which was The Death. Here's a track from their 1988 debut, In Death of Steve Silvester, which was released 11 years after their formation in 1977. This is Vampire. So, there is a reason why these early Death SS records are still very easily accessible to this day, and it's because this band hugely influenced not only Italian metal bands, but horror-influenced bands worldwide. They were and are this very ghoulish, horror movie worshipping, thrashy, blackened, weird rock band that really believed in making their shows a spectacle, and they were very obviously a huge influence on numerous bands, notably including artists like Ghost. Death SS continues to be active as a band to this day. They have 9 studio albums. They all operated under great pseudonyms and sonically emulate bands like Alice Cooper, Goblin, and Black Widow. P.S. There's also a new book written by vocalist Steve Silvester that's coming very soon, titled Death SS, The Necromancer of Rock, 1977 to 1982. I've included a link to order that book because he has a really fascinating history that is super worthy of exploration for all of you. For containing a myriad of hugely influential musicians in the Italian doom scene that went on to inspire an entire generation of bands, Death SS's debut in Death of Steve Silvester is getting 5 skulls out of 5. So the next band that we're going to discuss is one that was formed in 1981 in Verona and has similar spooky gloom vibes, but released their debut a few years before Death SS did. That band is Black Hole, and very similar to Death SS, they used a variety of pseudonyms to cloak their satanic rituals in mystery. This is a very crude and very special band, and we're going to listen to the song Bells of Death from their 1985 debut, Land of Mystery. This album, again, is particularly special to me, and I didn't enjoy pulling out a snippet because it's not a snippet album. None of these albums are snippet albums. It's a very nightmarish, obscure, rough gem that deserves a full front-to-back listen. There's a reason why it's been reissued by both Shadow Kingdom Records and High Roller Records over and over in the 2010s. It just sounds incredible and is clearly deeply immersed in Italy's horror movie tradition due to its hypnotic song structures. It's, as one very astute Metallum reviewer noted, the gothic horror ambiance is reminiscent of early Mario Bava, complete with homages to Hammer horror. But that's not all the album has to offer. The primitive sound seems comparable to Fulci's cinematic style, and several songs verge into goblin worship. So P.S., if you like Italian occult horror movies, definitely watch Conqueror. It's my favorite Fulci film because it's a mix of exploitation, sexual horror, and sword and sorcery, and it rules. So, for enduring for 30 years beyond the strange and pale, Black Hole is getting 5 skulls out of 5. Okay, so the third album that we're going to talk about is one of my favorite strange bands that has never really gotten that widespread amount of attention, probably due to the fact that they have deeply religious Latin language, progressive doom stylings. The band that we're going to talk about is The Black. They formed in 1988 in Pescara, Italy, and they currently have 9 full lengths. This is a band that exemplifies that very strange style of Italian occult doom. You may notice that all of the bands featured so far today have been around for a very long time and consistently release albums regardless of international exposure, and The Black is no exception to that rule. Here's a track from their second album, which is 1995's Refugium Peccatorum, which was released by the extremely important Italian label Black Widow Records. This is Mortalis Silentium. Yet again, we have a band with significant contributions to the Italian occult doom scene, but one that never really received the level of attention that Paul Chain or Death SS or Black Hole did. And that's for a few reasons, I think. They have a very religious approach and iconography. They're largely an instrumental act, and you might be also asking yourself, like, damn, what is up with these vocals? And indeed, the Black lyricist, vocalist, and guitarist Mario the Black D. Donatano does have a very flat register, but I think it works great in conjunction with their very dark, intentionally obscure sounding stylings. For making a soundtrack to the best occult horror movie that I have yet to watch, The Black's Refugium Peccatorum is getting 4 skulls out of 5. Fourth band. We're now in the fourth band. Awesome, underrated doom band that formed in Rome, is now based in Sweden, and is a classic example of an occult Italian horror doom band that was operating in the 2000s and 2010s. You may have now noticed that I'm trying to show how that there's incredible bands releasing things in every decade who are furthering the tradition. On that note, I'm featuring the mighty hands of Orlac, and their album that I'm featuring is called Figli Del Crepuscolo. This is the track Mill of the Stone Women. I love this release. I recently picked it up off of Bandcamp when I saw it was surprisingly cheap. I really like what this band is doing. Due to the work of vocalist and flutist The Sorceress, Hands of Orlac draws obvious comparisons to flutist and vocalist Alia O'Brien from Toronto's own Blood Ceremony, as well as Jinx Dawson of Coven. And this is a band that sounds like a creepy horror movie come to life. The guitar is spidery and unexpected, and I really hope to hear some news sometime soon about a new release, because it's getting to be, you know, eight or 9 years since the last one. So new Hands of Orlac, let's hear it. Because this is an excellent example of honoring the old ways of heavy metal, but with a new twist, especially with that flute, I am giving the Hands of Orlac record 4 skulls out of 5. The fifth and final band that we're going to talk about, and this is one that I actually discovered while doing my research for this piece, and it absolutely floored me, and I ended up taking out one of the other bands that I planned on highlighting because I figured they really deserved a mention. I've probably played this band's 2020 album 30 times already, and the chanting vocals and the riffs are just like driving and nice and creepy. The band that I'm going to talk about is Mourning Mist, with the opening track Ancient Ruins from their 2020 album Amen. Check out this violin, it is perfect. Mourning Mist formed in 2013 and released their self-titled debut in 2015. They occasionally integrate guttural vocals, and they feature consistent violin courtesy of band member Honourable, whose integration in the band really brings new dimensions to their sound and infuses the project with a very haunting vibe. Indeed, track 2 starts off in this extremely driving way with this extremely jarring interplay between the violin, the guitars, and the drums, and it's so good. And altogether, I have to agree with a Bandcamp reviewer who stated, and I quote, "This isn't an album, it's a seance." This isn't an album, it's a seance. For that reason, it's getting 4.5 skulls out of 5. What did we learn? Well, I have loved the Italian Occult Doom scene for a long time. I found it really fun to spend a nice chunk of time researching and listening to these albums yet again, as well as discussing this with, musicians and label owners and authors. I've had a soft spot for Italian Horror Doom for a very long time, and it's really fun to finally be able to talk about it on Banger, and of course, add a few more albums to my collection I discovered while researching. And that brings us to the shout-outs. First up, I want to talk about the 2011 album by the band L'Imperio dell'Ombre. Hailing from Florence, this deliciously absurd, almost jaunty Italian occult doom outfit rightfully dubs their music cemetery rock, and their second, and in my opinion, best album is called I Compagni di Baal. Next up, I'd like to recommend any release by the excellent Tony Tears, who have been a project in some form since 1988, and arguably my favorite album by them is their 2018 release, Demons Crawl at Your Side. Here's yet another example of a long-standing band who has released remarkably consistent and very creepy albums, up to and including 2 releases in the last 2 years. Third, listen to Abysmal Grief. They have been together since 1996, and their most recent output is 2018's excellent Blasphema Secta. They share a member with Tony Tears, and they are perfectly infused with that gothic style. For my fourth and final recommendation, listen to Arcana 13, who hail from Ravenna and take the horror part of the genre to logical extremes. As the band themselves state, imagine the ominous mystique of Lucio Fulci's classic The Beyond or Dario Argento's Inferno set to a Black Sabbath or Pentagram-inspired soundtrack. This is Arcana 13. Okay, I've said so many words, but before I go, it would be extremely foolish for me not to scream the band names Doomsword, Black Oath, and Nightgaunt. You should listen to all of them. Okay, that's it. Bye!